Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Time for a look at the recruiting weekend. Guys, we've waited all offseason, all winter, all spring for this. The first big official visit weekend for the Texas staff is this weekend. Gerry, let's start with Xavier Crowell as we talk about the prospects that made it in. And I just keep going back to, everybody can have their favorite back. It might be Crowell, it might be Derek Cooper. I just like the fact that this is a kid from the state of Alabama who Kalen DeBoer and that staff want.
Yes.
That Sark and Chris and Chad Scott are saying, no, we're going to get in the thick of the fight for that.
No doubt. I mean, look, he's from about an hour north of Mobile. Xavier Crowell. This is his fourth time on campus. So this is his official visit, and this will be his last time on campus if he chooses Alabama here in 20 days. But we'll see if Texas can make another dent in that, because Texas has done well in this recruitment dating back to when Tashard Choice offered him and got him on campus the first time. I think his mom really likes Texas. With that being said, I think Alabama's the favorite. I think Robert Gillespie has one job in this recruiting cycle for Alabama, and that is to win out for Xavier Crowell, who was at Georgia last weekend. I mean, you look at Georgia's running back board, well, it's him and Derek Cooper. So the two names you brought up, Jeff, that's the top of the board over there. And Xavier Crowell does like Texas. He has 3 family members with him on this visit this weekend. But is Texas going to have enough to overcome Alabama? He visits Auburn next week and then Alabama on the 20th. Like I said, he's already been to Georgia. He may mix in an FSU midweek visit. So we'll have to see where it goes. But I do think Alabama is the favorite coming into the June visits. And Texas probably sits at 2 and Georgia's 3. And I'm not discounting Auburn, but Auburn, I think, would be an upset winner at this point.
CJ, I'm going to ask you to step into Chad Scott's chair. What if you're in front of Xavier Crowell this weekend? This is your last pitch. What's your angle? What are you telling him to get him in the boat?
I think for me, it's you've had a number of guys drafted over the last years, whether it be developed by Chad Scott or Tashard Choice, but the system, the program, the scheme puts guys into the NFL. They're playing on the biggest stage. They're playing on the biggest games. To me, you look at quarterback at Texas, right behind is running back, in the history in which you can point to a Ricky Williams, an Earl Campbell, a Bijan Robinson, a Cedric Benson, and Jamal. The list goes on, and that brotherhood is pretty darn strong, comparable to just about anybody that any school in the country can put up and produce. So that brotherhood is strong. Of course, on top of that, you're going to be playing some meaningful games and likely off to the NFL after some strong seasons in which you will get your shot. Texas has seen that with C.J. Baxter stepping in for Jonathan Brooks, Trey Wisner stepping in for C.J. Baxter last year, and now this room is as healthy as it's ever been. But that pedigree and that pipeline to the NFL remains.
C.J. forgot orange Lambos.
Why not? They're out there.
CJ tweeted about it.
Jerry's allegedly doing a photo shoot with those orange Lambos. I can't confirm that.
Music video.
Gerry, one of the first faces that Lamar Brown saw when he got off the plane was your smiling face at the airport. Gerry, we've talked about maybe a Jerry Tillery comparison with him, just physically getting to look at him. Your first impressions of Lamar Brown as he makes his official visit to Texas?
I think CJ and I both thought he was a very impressive looking athlete. He has a tremendous build. I can see why people in our industry have him as a 5-star prospect, because once the tape meets the reality of seeing him in person, he checks all those boxes immediately, from the movement skills and the tape to then you see him in person, you see that frame. And look, he has a defensive line build that could also play offensive line. I don't think this is a stretch off tape and off seeing him in person that people say, oh, this guy, he just wants to play D-line. We're just trying to tell him that to try to get him in the boat. I don't buy that after seeing him. He has a D-line frame. If that's what he wants to play, he has a frame of a 5-star athlete that's a jumbo athlete. But if he wants to play defensive line, I mean, he's got the length. He has got a really good frame. He has got skinny ankles. He's got that athletic look to him. And by the way, I think Lyle Clark actually has Texas in this thing. I know that LSU and A&M are the two schools mentioned. Obviously, Miami made a big run at it last weekend, CJ. But I think Texas is in this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I talked to somebody this afternoon after most of these guys got on campus, and the message was basically keep an eye on him. And that's not to say Texas is going to land anything soon. That we're going to watch these officials play out. And I believe he has a July 4th or July 12th commitment date coming up next month. But point being is look out for the Longhorns in this recruitment. With some Louisiana ties already, I think that this is one with Alan Clark now in the fold for the Longhorns. This could be a little sneaky summer fling, if you will.
All right, we'll get back to the recruiting weekend here in just a second, but right now I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. It's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? Call Andy. He'll take you through the process to help you find a business that will fit your skill set and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net or call him at 404-973-9901. Again, that's Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. We want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. Guys, there were some guys you guys got to see, some guys you didn't. It just timing with flights and arrivals and schedules gets it can get kind of weird. But Gerry, just about everybody that was expected to make it in made it in.
Yeah, with the exception of Travis Stevenson, the athlete / corner Georgia Tech commitment out of Quitman, Georgia, and South Georgia, north of Tallahassee. He actually told On Texas Football this afternoon that he changed his official visit to June 13th. So he will be at Texas June 13th through 15th, and then Georgia on the 20th through 22nd. I think Georgia Tech maybe a midweeker where he's committed. But he says that he's not visiting Texas this weekend, which is not surprised. We didn't see him on social media saying he was in Austin. We didn't see him at the airport Friday. So it makes sense that he now tells OTF he's coming in next weekend. We saw most of the guys arrive today. Devon Benjamin got in town with multiple family members. We saw Kenodo Hudson was actually there to pick him up. A lot of times it's the staffers, maybe a recruiting staffer or some of the assistant position staffers, assistants. But Kenodo Hudson, if you're wondering how big of a deal Devon Benjamin is to Texas, Kenodo Hudson came to pick him up at the airport. So the guy that's recruiting him came to pick him up. That's a sign of a guy who they want very badly. And obviously he was at Michigan last weekend. But CJ, we saw a number of the guys come through today. And obviously Lamar Brown kind of stole the show physically, I would say. Corey Wells is another guy that has a really good frame. He's got long out of Petal, Mississippi. He's a 4-star D lineman. He's got long arms, 6'5", 290, legitimate, big frame on him as well.
Yeah, you talk about big humans on the offensive side of the ball, and there will be some trickling in over the next few weeks. Defensive line certainly looking that same way. Gerry, Devon Benjamin, who did he come in with?
His father for sure, and I think maybe an uncle. There's a couple other family members with him.
Okay, I like keeping track of that. We saw a number of family members come in. Obviously, you mentioned Lamar Brown. It was he and his mother and his younger brother. Bo Jandro, the linebacker to Chandler, Arizona, was in with both of his parents, as was Texas commit Hayward Howard, who was all horns. He had his burnt orange on. His mom was looking forward to the weekend as well. So that was one of the big excitements for me. And then on the back end, guys that drove in. And we'll get to some of those names. Temple's Jamarian Carlton made it in. Waxahachie's Cohen Brown, he made it in as well. Look, number of big-time DFW guys made the trip. But Dylan Berryman arriving from Shreveport, that's a big one as well.
And I would say this, Malachi Lee, the Hawaii kids normally get in on a Thursday night, and he did get in on Thursday because obviously if you live in Hawaii, you're going to come in Thursday night. School's not going to fly in on a Friday. That doesn't make much sense. So Malachi Lee and his family got into Austin on a Thursday night. The specialist, obviously the kicker in the group, and that's Jake Collette out of Ringgold, Georgia, out of Heritage, is on campus. The punter, Mikey Bukowskis, who a lot of people had pegged as a potential commitment to Texas. Clemson offer muddied the water there. So we'll see what happens. Jake Collette, the kicker, we think is a Texas lean. Bo Jandro, his brother's committed to Oklahoma. His brother was not on the visit, CJ. As we saw, it was the dad and the mom along with Bo Jandro. With Hayward Howard, the mom and dad are both here on the visit. With Corey Wells, we saw multiple family members. With Lamar Brown, it was his mom and little brother were on the visit. So there's a lot of family members, accompany guys. We think, as far as Malachi Lee goes, we think Trevor Gooseby is part of the host of that. He's not the only host, but he's one of the guys that's helping host Malachi Lee. And Trevor Gooseby, he hosted a lot of guys last weekend, and right now he's on the books to be part of hosting offensive linemen this weekend, the 13th weekend, and the 20th weekend.
Yeah, he's expected to be the host for Felix Ojo as well. So big
And
one in the 5-star coming up.
Yep.
Gerry, I know it's the opening weekend, and we're not even close to halfway through it at this point as far as official visitors goes. But I'm intrigued to know the kids from really that SEC footprint, the heart of SEC country, the kids from Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, even the northern part of Florida, where maybe they didn't grow up with Texas being top of mind, but now they're in the SEC, they're winning ball games. Texas is an attractive option. What do you feel like kids from that part of the country, when they get to Texas and then they leave, does it surpass expectations? Are they typically blown away? How much does it help Texas? Just give me your thoughts on the reaction that typically those out-of-state kids have, specifically kids from the Southeast.
Yeah, I think it races past expectations, right? I mean, every kid says, well, everything actually is bigger in Texas. That's what you hear that about 80% of guys, right, CJ, after they visit. They kind of jokingly say that. And look, that's not to say Georgia doesn't have great facilities or Florida has great facilities, but here's the reality is Texas, from a facilities stadium standpoint, can go toe-to-toe with anybody. But what Austin also has is the city itself. Now, and that's hard to compete with. Now, if you're from a small town, it can be, you like a Terry Bussey in the last class, it can be too big at times. There's kids that do prefer a smaller, not that College Station's a small town or Waco's a small town or, Starkville is a small town, but Athens isn't necessarily a small town, but it's more of a college town versus a big city. So I think but I think more guys are drawn to the big city of Austin and the bright light, so to speak, of Austin and everything that can provide for you in terms of opportunity in life, opportunity in NIL, and having a great college experience where you feel like you can kind of hide outside of football. And everywhere you go, you're not all. And that's one of the things Arch talked about is the size of Austin is, he felt like he could have a life outside of football. If you go to the smaller college towns, that's not always the case. Some kids want it to be that way, but there's some kids that prefer to be in the big city and actually feel like they can have a life outside of football. And everywhere they go isn't just about, hey, you're the guy that plays University of Texas football.
Yeah, I was like looking back on previous years, Texas didn't always have the Lamborghinis out front, right?
That's right.
But they've always had the big skyline. They've always had the mega buildings downtown. And I think that's something that attracts more kids than it turns off. Of course, it kind of depends on how they grew up, what school they go to, what they prioritize. But in this day and age, where, the dollar makes, you holler essentially in recruiting, I look back to when Anthony Hill and Jonte Cook hosted Colin Simmons, and they're up at one of the penthouse floors, eating dinner. That makes a difference in my eyes. And it kind of gives you a glimpse of living the NFL life in an NFL city, but in college, right? So that's always something I think, it could be a detriment if a kid doesn't like the hustle and bustle of the city, but you got your name in the bright lights. You could be the face of the city theoretically without a major pros team. It's a secret weapon in Texas's pocket, in my eyes.
By the way, CJ just came up with a new hashtag, recruiting dollar make you holla. But let's also say this. Parents are attracted to the city of Austin and what that can provide for their children and a place that looks fun and enjoyable for them to go see their kids on college game day weekends and everything that's going on. There's parents that move to Austin because it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So there's things outside of just the kid. Now the kid's there more, but we've seen some parents start to move down or move to the Austin area for jobs and whatnot. So I think it's attractive on all fronts. Obviously, big cities with a lot to do are always going to be more favorable than smaller college towns to parents and kids, but it doesn't mean all of them. There's certainly a faction of kids. But, Jeff, to your point, this is what I wanted to say, too. So in the case of a Travis Stevenson, whether he ever makes the visit or not now, right, we're a little, okay, let's see if he comes in since it's apparently switched to the 13th. But the fact that Texas went in and offered a kid in Quitman, Georgia in mid-May and could get him to set up an official visit tells you where Texas is in recruiting and now the landscape of Texas football. Because ask Sark if he could have done that 3 years ago and he'd have laughed at you, right? There was no chance that was happening. And now Texas can go in, a Corey Wells from Petal, and get him on campus in April. And all of a sudden, he's back for an official visit in June. And he's a smaller town guy, right? And Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Auburn are trying to fight that and say, college town, right? Come to be in these great college towns. But that's just where Texas is at recruiting right now. They have the ability to get more kids on campus kind of on command in a way than they've ever had nationally.
Two-part question, guys, to wrap it up. What do you guys feel like Sark and this staff do best on these official visits? Where do they shine the most? And as kids start to leave on Sunday and their families leave on Sunday and they head back home, what do you feel like they'll be talking about most coming off of this visit?
Two-part for me. The first is, as we just talked about, kind of showcasing the university and the city combined. That's one. But secondly, and it might be a little recency bias, but Gerry, talking to a lot of these kids last year, and maybe the year before as well. But one of the big things that I always remember is they're coming right off of a Sunday visit with the coaching staff and Steve Sarkisian. Yeah. And that's really where they put their final touches on the visit. And that, everything is great. You go out to eat, you see, the school, you see the stadium, you get in the jerseys, you take your photos. But that last meeting with the coaching staff, I think, is where they really do a fine job of, kind of putting the exclamation point on the visit, on the trip, and making it a lasting impression for when they go off to a Georgia, a Florida, a Alabama, and Oklahoma for their next weekend. They don't forget that, hey, June 6th, it might be early, but I enjoyed my time in Austin. They certainly had a final visit message for me. Texas last year, at least at this point, first weekend, a lot of guys that they didn't get in the class, but you heard, I wasn't expecting Texas to be like this in my recruitment.
Yeah, I would say two things for me. One, and I know NIL is maybe 90% of recruiting now, but you still have to win games. But you still don't get all these guys if you have a bad locker room, or if when kids and parents come on visits, they don't get a good feeling from the players.
Good point.
You only recruit at this level if your players have great feedback. And I think Sark's done a really good job from a culture standpoint, and having guys, and CJ and I deal with these guys. I mean, kids are pretty genuine nowadays. They're very savvy at the same times, but they're still pretty genuine when you get around them. And I think Texas is doing a good job of recruiting good kids in terms of personality and genuineness, where I think if you look a kid in the eye and ask him questions, you're going to get a real answer from him. So it's more than an NIL answer. Hey, that's why. Well, have you seen my car? This is why. It's more than that. I think Texas has done a really good job of that. And then I think the other one is one of the things from this last cycle, CJ, and I'll go ahead and say it. I'm Elijah Bo Barnes' dad. I was talking to him, and he said the parents are doing a great job at Texas of recruiting parents. And there's parents that are on campus this weekend whose kids play on the team to be part of this recruiting visit weekend. And if you have parents that are willing to recruit other parents, that is always big in a parent feeling comfortable letting their kid go 100, 200, 1,500 miles away. And I'll say the third thing, but something just popped up in my head because of that. You can bring a kid in from any part of this country right now, and they see a familiar face that they may know. Malachi Lee visits from Honolulu. Well, Leonga will be part of his visit from Kahuku. They may not be on the same island or from the same area, but he knows who Leonga is. You bring anybody in from Florida, and Cedric Baxter, Jarrett Gibson, all those guys are on campus. From Georgia now, anybody that visits, Dre Quinn and these guys next week, Bryce Perry Wright, they're going to see Nick Brooks. They're going to see Zealous Hicks. They're going to see Emory Winston, Justice Terry. So anywhere Texas goes to recruit now, when they bring a kid in on campus, there's a familiarity.
Yeah, I dig that. And to your point, Gerry, look, the three of us have been doing this long enough now. We can all find times where parents didn't really want to sell the program and
No.
didn't have the best experience. And we can go through the years, and there were times where you heard straight up players were telling recruits, you might want to look somewhere else. If this is what you're looking for, you might not find it at Texas. Definitely not the case right now because Sark's got the culture working. Everybody winning, like you said, Gerry, bottom line with all this, winning helps a lot. And it's easy. I'm downplaying what Sark has done with the culture, but it's a lot easier for guys to buy in when you've been to the CFP semifinals the last 2 years.
Yeah, if you're 2-10, your culture normally sucks.
Pretty much. And those coaches are usually not long for the world. CJ, Gerry, thank you guys so much for the knowledge and expertise as always. We will keep you up to date as much as we physically can here on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to On Texas Football. Make sure you like this video. If you want up to the second coverage, CJ mentioned we've got a running thread over at ontexasfootball.com. Right now is the time where you want to sign up over there. If you're not a member, use the promo code OTFOG. That will get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. You don't want to miss that. Take advantage of it. These visit weekends are going to be huge. And then before you know it, we'll be into camp and getting ready for the start of the 2025 season. So get over to ontexasfootball.com right now. Again, the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes and the entire On Texas Football staff. For CJ and Gerry, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, hook 'em.